Hello! Welcome back to Marcie's Kitchen. We are now going to be making an easy vegan tortilla soup. First step that's very important is the night before you plan to actually cook the soup, soak your hominy. You can get hominy in a can or you can get hominy in bulk like I do at our Benton store. So I've already used a ton of it. When I first got the bag, it was filled all the way up to here and the bag was only $1.92. So definitely the more economical way to go about hominy. And this is just a dried, cracked white hominy. So to soak your hominy, you're gonna wanna soak it in cold water, totally cover the kernels of the hominy for 6 to 10 hours. If you don't do that, this is gonna take so much longer than it needs to, so it's really a crucial part. So I've got my hominy where I had soaked it last night before I went to bed. So I'm just gonna rinse my dry, cracked hominy that's soaked overnight, minimum 6 hours. I actually did mine for a little over 10 hours because it's a pretty long process even after you soak it to cook it. So I'm just gonna rinse it. So we're just gonna put our hominy in a saucepan. Then we're gonna fill it up with water. So we're just gonna bring the hominy to a boil. And now that we've brought our dry cracked hominy to a boil, we're gonna go ahead and lower the heat and you're gonna simmer for a minimum of 1 hour. Make sure to watch the water levels and make sure that we don't run out of water. So to get our tortilla soup on the stove and started, we're gonna add in 1 1/4 cup water. Now this is if you're doing the vegetable broth powder where you add it to the water. If you just wanna do vegetable broth, just 1 1/4 cup of vegetable broth. Got my powder here to add to my water. You're just gonna whisk that all together. And then we're gonna add our onions and our garlic. You're gonna be adding 1 yellow onion. Now, if you wanna dice it because you like chunks in your soup, you're more than welcome to do that. But again, I don't like crunchy onions or even onion chunks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add mine to the vegetable broth along with the garlic, soften them, then put them in the blender. So I did not go ahead and dice because there's really no point. So for me, I just do slices small enough so they can soften. And you're gonna have 3 garlic cloves. Again, follow this method if you like to puree your onions and your garlic. If you're okay with small pieces of onion and garlic in your recipe, then just go ahead and add in your diced onions and your diced garlic. But mine, I just made into small slices because it's gonna go in the blender anyways. I've got my onions, garlic, and vegetable broth, and that's gonna go ahead and go on the stove. I am giving you the ingredients and the proportions for a single batch. I am making a double batch because I want this to last all week. This is gonna be my dinner for all week. And we're just gonna put that on a medium heat so we can bring it to a simmer. And then we're just gonna wait until the onions and the garlic are soft enough to go in the blender to puree. So Friday I went to the store and got all my ingredients after I got off work. I really was not interested in making multiple stops. I was actually able to find everything at Aldi. So we've got sweet whole kernel corn, field to frozen. If you don't shop at Aldi, you gotta check it out. It's super reasonable. There are some different things, like you have to put a quarter in to get your cart, but you get that quarter back. You have to bag your own, or if you find boxes throughout the store, just put your items in the boxes and out you go. And now they're carrying a lot of healthy options since it's the first of the year. So we're gonna go ahead and get our corn on. So it calls for 1 cup corn. And for me, that package was just perfect. I needed 2 cups since I'm making a double batch. Again, I'm giving you the ingredients and proportions for a single batch. In that organic sweet whole kernel corn bag that was in the frozen section, it's 10 ounces. It was 2 cups basically. So that works out perfect for me. So we're just gonna go ahead and get that on the stove. So I'm just gonna turn my corn on so it can start to cook. At the same time, we still have our hominy going. It's got about 10 more minutes before it reaches the hour cook mark. I have had to add a couple more cups of water. And then of course at the same time, we've got our onions, garlic, and vegetable broth softening the garlic and the onions. So it took about 10 minutes, and our onion is translucent now, so it should puree with no problem. Same with the garlic. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the blender. Again, if you don't mind chunks of onion and garlic, you don't have to puree it, but I don't like chunky things. So here we've got our onions and garlic and vegetable broth for those that don't like big pieces of onion or garlic, and we're just going to puree that. That should be plenty good. So we're just going to put that back in the pan before we add our tomatoes and our oregano and our black beans. So we're going to add our spices now. So I've got 1 teaspoon dried oregano and 2 teaspoons chili powder. And the chili powder I actually made myself from other spices in the house when I was trying to make something and didn't have enough chili powder from the Nature's Wonder health food store. I'm just going to stir that in. This is one of my favorite soups, and it doesn't have to be cold for me to eat it. I eat soup all the time. So as you can see, the diced tomatoes from Sam's Club Organic Members Mark are a little bit chunky. As you can tell from my other videos, I don't like chunky. So I'm going to puree those as well. Only takes a second, makes such a difference. Otherwise, I would pick out the big tomato. So we've got our spices in. Now we're going to add our tomato puree. Again, that's an option that you can omit if you don't care to have chunky tomatoes. So a quick cleanup hack with a blender, so you don't have to take it apart, is you just put in some dish soap, just a little bit of hot water. You're just going to put it back on your blender and blend it for 10 seconds. Then you just take your sprayer, rinse it out, and it's good to go. It cleans underneath the blade even more effectively than you can with a washcloth, and no risk of cutting yourself. And you're just going to go ahead and add some additional water along with your tomatoes and your spices now. So now you've added your spices, your tomatoes, your water. We're just going to stir that all together. We're going to bring that to a simmer for 5 to 10 minutes. And we're still working on our hominy back here. It's about the hour and 20-minute mark because it still wasn't quite where I wanted it at the hour. It takes a long time to cook hominy, especially when you're not taking it from a can. They say from a can it's not as flavorful and is also a little gummy. I've actually never had any from a can. And we've got our corn over here. So it's been simmering for 10 minutes. So we're just going to go ahead and stir that. We'll put in our beans, our corn, and our hominy. If you want to add more spices, you can. I love oregano, basil, anything like that, but I'm not a fan of cilantro, so you won't see me putting that in much. But a lot of people like cilantro for this kind of thing. So if you're new to the vegan lifestyle, there are some different things that we use that I know I personally wouldn't think about until I started cooking vegan. But the juice that's in a bean can, there's uses to it. Don't just throw it out. So just get yourself a container and just pour that bean juice in there. Put it in your fridge. I use bean juice, which is called aquafaba, in some of the pizza crusts that I make, some of the hummuses. You can actually use it in the place of an oil. There's lots of different uses, so don't just throw out that aquafaba. Put it in your fridge. But I would label the date that you put it in the fridge. And be careful not to use it too many days after. I'd say within a week you'd be okay. So we have our Members Mark organic black beans from Sam's Club. You're going to add in 1 15-ounce can. You could also go the dried bean route. I just didn't have any of the dried black beans that you would soak. I'm going to drain our corn. It smells delicious. So we've got our hominy. It's been on for about an hour and 40 minutes. Just going to try kernel just to make sure. Yep, it's ready to go. So we'll drain that and we'll put that in. I just love these pans that we have because you don't have to have extra colander for these pans when you go to strain. They're Tramontina. Richard and I got them at an auction. I think it was like a set of 4 or 5, of course, used. Probably 12 years ago or more. So we've got our cup of white cracked hominy. And since that was dried and we had to soak it, I would do at least under half of the dried of what you're going to need in your recipe because it is going to expand. We're just going to stir that all together, and it needs to continue to simmer for 5 to 10 minutes. And then it'll be done and ready to eat, and you can top it with tortillas, avocado, whatever you prefer. I personally just eat it as the soup with just a spoon. Every once in a while it's okay with tortillas. So we're at our 10 minutes of simmering once we've added our beans and any other peppers or spices that you would like to add. I would have added jalapenos, but I used all the rest of my jalapenos yesterday, sadly. So here is the easy vegan tortilla soup. So there you have it. Looks delicious. And I'm going to use some of the crust from our easy crust and vegan bread to dip into it instead of a tortilla chip.